I honestly believe that Scott Gilfoid is a fucking retarded boxing fan who lives in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and who one day became absolutely infatuated with Deontay Wilder. And then he decided to one day apply for a job as a boxing writer on a website called boxingnews24.com. And then he got the job and decided to do nothing but write articles kissing Deontay Wilder's ass and bashing every heavyweight in the heavyweight division. That's what I honestly believe. Now I'm going to read a piece that Mr. Scott Gilfoid has recently wrote. And now I'm going to read. Joshua has hurt his career by fighting a lot of over-the-hill fighters in record-padding fights. His wily promoter, Hearn, has been matching him with the loving care of a mother hen, taking care of one of his nestlings. You have to wonder what Joshua's career would be like today if Hearn had put him in against the biggest threats from day one when he turned pro in 2012, instead of all the wasted fights against weak opposition. Boxing fans could have seen Joshua fighting Wilder 3 or 4 times, Luis Ortiz, Wladimir when he was still young and able in 2012, David HAYE and Povetkin when he was still young in 2012. So this is what the fucking retard Scott Gilfoid has written in one of his articles. First of all, the first thing I gotta address is this. He says that Eddie Hearn has been protecting Anthony Joshua, and by his own words, he says like a mother hen. And he says that had Eddie Hearn been putting Joshua in there against the toughest threats at the start of his career, then maybe he would be a great fighter, I guess. And he says that he how come Eddie Hearn didn't put Joshua in there with Wladimir, Luis Ortiz, David HAYE, Povetkin when they were still young back in 2012? First of all, is this fucking guy on crack? Like, this is why I question this guy's boxing knowledge. I honestly believe that these boxing websites hire people that have no knowledge in the sport of boxing. This guy says, how come, in his own article, this guy is supposed to be a professional boxing writer, and he says in his own article, how come Joshua didn't fight Wladimir, Povetkin, David HAYE when he first turned pro in 2012? First of all, you fucking nutcase, Joshua wasn't even a professional in 2012. Joshua turned pro in October 2013. October 2013, Joshua turned pro. Exactly 1 year after he won gold in the Olympics. You know what he was doing back in 2012? He was fighting in the Olympics. He was an amateur. He wasn't a pro. So how in the heck could Anthony Joshua have fought David HAYE, Alexander Povetkin, and Vladimir Klitschko and Luis Ortiz back in 2012 when he wasn't even a professional fighter yet? Like, what this guy's saying in his article is what he's supposed to be saying about Deontay Wilder, because the only fucking fighter who was a professional fighter back in 2012 was Deontay Wilder. Deontay Wilder back in 2012 had like 25, 26 professional fights. These are 100% facts. He had like 26 professional boxing matches. He had 26 professional fights under his belt. He wasn't fighting David HAYE. He wasn't fighting Povetkin. He wasn't fighting Vladimir Klitschko. How come this Scott Gilfoid guy doesn't make an article saying, why wasn't Deontay Wilder fighting Vladimir Klitschko, Povetkin, David HAYE back in 2012? Why isn't he making articles about that? Because he's a biased boxing writer. But then he has the audacity and the nerve to make an article saying, how come Joshua is protected? How come Eddie Hearn is protecting Anthony Joshua, and how come he wasn't fighting? Like, this guy's fucking retarded. He's dumb. He just lost all his boxing credentials saying that how come Anthony Joshua did not fight Vladimir Klitschko, Ortiz, Povetkin, David HAYE in the year 2012 when he first turned pro. He wasn't even a pro yet. It just goes to show you this guy is dumb. He doesn't know. He doesn't even pay attention to Anthony Joshua's career. He doesn't even know when this guy turned pro. It just goes to show he's a casual boxing fan. He's a casual Deontay Wilder fanboy that just decided to become a boxing writer on a website called Boxing News 24/7 just to defend Deontay Wilder. Again, and even if he did turn pro in 2012, you mean to tell me he had to be fighting guys like Wladimir, Klitschko, David Haye, Luis Ortiz, Alexander Povetkin in his first year as a pro? So he's saying, how come he didn't fight as soon as he turned pro? So you're saying in his third fight he should have been fighting Wladimir Klitschko, in his fourth, fifth fight he should have been fighting David Haye? How stupid is that? Who in their right mind would put a prospect, a novice who just turned pro, in there with guys like Wladimir, Povetkin, Luis Ortiz? And by the way, Luis Ortiz wasn't even relevant back in 2012. Ain't nobody was talking about Luis. Luis Ortiz did not become relevant until he beat Brian Jennings 3 years later. The only one who was relevant back then in 2012 was Wladimir Klitschko, Povetkin, and maybe David Haye, because David Haye had just knocked out Derek Chisora. But David Haye had also already lost to Wladimir Klitschko. So if you think about it, the most relevant heavyweights at that particular time was Wladimir Klitschko and Povetkin, because Povetkin was a young, he was a champion, yeah. And he was undefeated at the time. Again, Anthony Joshua wasn't even a fucking professional. So what the hell is he talking about? How come he didn't fight him back when he was in his heyday in 2012? This is why I hate about biased as boxing fans, biased as writers. This guy's such a biased, weasel of a boxing writer. It's so obvious. This guy say, to try and take credit away from Joshua, he says, why didn't he fight him when he was much younger in 2012? Again, idiot. This guy wasn't even a professional fighter back in 2012. What are you talking about? It's just because to show you how much of a casual boxer fan you are, Mr. Scott Gilfoid. And how come he doesn't make this guy is saying that Joshua needed to fight these type of guys the minute he turned pro. Where are the articles of Scott Gilfoid going around saying, how come Deontay Wilder is 26-0 and he has not fought a guy with a post yet? Why hasn't he fought Ortiz? The only one who he should be criticizing about their resume back in 2012 is Deontay Wilder, because he was the only one who was actually a professional fighter at the time. He was the one who had nearly 30 professional fights, and he wasn't fighting guys like Wladimir, David Haye, Povetkin. It would have been great for him to fight somebody like David Haye at the time, because at the time he was fighting none but cab drivers and guys with no posters. So this is why I don't understand why. This is why I find it comical when I see BoxingNews247.com and with this writer. I honestly don't understand. Like what are the credentials to become a boxing writer on Boxing News 24/7? It's like I always thought that you needed to have at least some knowledge of boxing, but apparently they just hire people that have no knowledge of the sport of boxing. They're just they could just be casual fanboys of boxers, and they decide to apply for a job on Boxing News 24/7 and they get hired. Again, this Scott Gilfoid fella has absolutely no knowledge of boxing. You could see it in the way he writes. You could see it in the way he talks about other fighters. He doesn't even know when Anthony Joshua turned pro. He comes up with these, he says these really dumb articles. He talks about that Anthony Joshua was being protected by Eddie Hearn. But dude, Deontay Wilder was protected his entire career. What did Deontay Wilder do in his first 23 fights? The best guy in his resume probably had 15 losses. This guy's a complete retard, people. Honestly, this guy's retarded, Scott Gilfoid. Don't pay no mind to this guy's articles. I know a lot of people be reading his articles. I'm telling you, man, this guy doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. He's absolutely retarded. Anyway, guys, please subscribe for latest boxing, and I'm out.